2021 school year or until repealed by the school board. So I'm just wondering if that has been repealed, or does the superintendent still have those powers? And then my second thing is about visitors in the buildings and the essential visitor form. As I know Kevin is very aware, there are a lot of questions around this form: who fills it out, and is it needed? And my biggest concern is the inconsistency about who is allowed in the buildings. For example, we're all here tonight. I understand some Board of Ed members are gonna go see the new kindergarten. My husband and I are gonna, I'm gonna be here tomorrow helping out with picture day, but my husband and I cannot go see my son's school counselor, even outside of school hours. We were told the district doesn't allow that. So I just appreciated something we would put together in writing to help clarify and make it consistent. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate, would you do the consent calendar, please?
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve the items on the consent calendar, exhibits 21-110 through 21-113 as recommended.
Motion made by Kate, could I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Al. Any questions, discussion on that motion? Consent calendar, yes, Rachel.
Just to clarify on the October 13th minutes, in my PTO report, it sounds like I'm talking about the same PTO when it's, really talking about three. The first was the DHS PTO, the second AIS PTO, and the third was the citywide PTO, just to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Make those corrections. Are there any other corrections to be made? Kate, if you do the roll call.
I do have a question to make. On the calendar, I think it says November.
No, I was gonna make that clarification on the, when we got down to that. On November the 23rd is our board meeting, the last board meeting in November. It states in the package that it's the 21st. Okay? So there's no on your package, there's the 23rd instead of 21st, because I think the 21st is either on a Sunday or something, okay? So just a, okay. Thank you. Any other? Kate, do the roll call.
Rachel Gillespie. Kate Canada, aye. Ralph Cooper.
Yes.
Laura Bailey. Aye. Joe DeSilva.
Aye.
Rich Janelli.
Aye.
Jackie Molinaro. Al Russo. Amy Scolino.
Aye. Thank you. Motion is so carried. Before we get to the action item.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. So given the work with our committee meetings, most recently a finance committee meeting, so we'll have all the time of motion following my next Chairperson Cooper and Mrs. Deli. We have a finance committee meetings previous or prior to the second board meeting, so that the board has an opportunity to see the report. And I thought it would be more appropriate that the committee or the board has an opportunity to review the report first, the entire board, before actually getting going into voting on it. And it's also my wonder if it might not be a practice for all of the committees. I know all of them don't necessarily yield to a vote in motion, but perhaps we should have to get the report first, then the motions after. So I just wanted to recommend.
Clarify, so you're saying just for committee for an action item?
I'm sorry, so just to clarify, I had requested to Chairperson Cooper, Mr. Ginelli, that we schedule our finance meetings at least a week prior to the second board meeting of the month, before the board approves the monthly reports. Our other committees don't necessarily yield in the motion, but it might be a good practice for us to review the chair committee reports prior to any motions, just so that there's any discussion, anything might have an impact on the motion, at least there's a discussion
item, which is doing the financial report tonight, the committee met. So do you want to give a brief summary of what the committee discussed and then we act on the action item?
Right, so in Roman numeral 15, typically the board shares their committee reports really almost at the end. And I'm recommending to move up the committee reports prior to motion so that there's a discussion, catch everyone up, and go to your vote.
Discussion. Possibly would it be more advantageous to have our CFO give the contents of his monthly statement.
Sure.
Rich?
The finance committee met, it was Tuesday, this week. The meeting was for the 3-month ending September 30th. There was a procedure packet, a brief description of the events through the 3 months. John went through and indicated that he would see at this particular point any issues that was very anomaly here, and that there were certain items that you could watch as you call the ticket issues, such as the health insurance, essentially, one of the items, line numbers of expenditures that we never really sure how much it's going to be because we're self-insured, and also with the catch-up of the COVID in the last 2 years, we have to watch that closely. With that, I'll hand it on to John to go through and elaborate a little bit more.
Thank you very much. The report's in your package on page 12, so just very briefly. What I like to do in the beginning of the year like this is just let you know if things are happening the way you planned them to be when you adopted your budget, or if something else was happening. The message, because it's really too early to compare the budgets, things like that. We'll do that as we get further along in the year. But each of the programs, services that you budgeted to be put in place are in place and they're running as planned. I did mention a couple of things, although you had them in mind, I thought it was worth talking about. We heard about health insurance, but also the tents that we plan to use here. We're not going to use as many tents. There are 3 that are left up. They'll be up for a while. We had budgeted $720,000. Turns out we'll only be paying about $400,000. So there's a savings there. And then we also discussed at the committee food costs and what's going on there. We met with Sodexo, a food management company, the other day, and we'll be watching that closely. If there's anything significant, we'll certainly put it in our report so we can see what's happening there. The idea being that if there are things that happen in the food service program, we want you to know early and not towards the end of the year. We don't expect there will be, but it's good to keep our eyes on.
Thank you.
I had a question. I don't know that it's so much for John. It might be for Kevin on food. This was Kevin and I spoke about this a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago. I heard from a lot of parents once baseball started talking about school lunch, both quality and quantity, portion size was much smaller in their perception than past years, and quality was down. I think you had mentioned you were talking to Sodexo. Is that anything doing with the cost? Are those two things connected?
It should not be. So we were, John and I actually just had a meeting with Sodexo yesterday. It was really trying to get to know the superintendent, professor, appreciate it. As part of the meeting, they had shared their challenges with production costs. I guess those things are certainly understandable. Quality, we should not compromise on quality, under any circumstance. And certainly that's something clear to me. I've also asked, Sodexo to have a representative, Sodexo that works in the district. So I have asked them to come and speak to our parents, make sure there's a process in place in which parents from 9-12, 6-8, and K-5, have more say in what's in the menu. Make sure that menu is representative of our school community. Obviously, the FDA has guidelines on what can and cannot be served, but our parents and our kids, our students, should have more of a say in what should go on. And my hope is that once they have a say in what driving the menu, then they'll be a little bit more happy with what's actually shared, given to the food or anything. And then if we're not happy with it, that's a different story. But at least give them an opportunity to have a say so in the menu. So that's something that we'll be working on very soon. So I'm going to start with citywide PTO and ask if they'll entertain the idea of having Sodexo come in and speak to families. And then we will try to put together some committees. Apparently, there's already a representative as well. So we'll make sure we have one in place for 6-8 and then also K-5. I think that started next year. We have this in place.
Great, thank you.
Yes, okay. I have a question about the food costs and the contract. Is there a cap on food costs in the contract?
There's not.
Okay. Thank you, that's what I need.
Any other questions?
I'm not sure.
Okay, go ahead.
But, again, I wanted to say about the finance, that I appreciate the summary that packet. I think monthly meetings are a good idea for the finance committee. I was again able to watch, and so I'm pretty up to speed on what happened. But I'm a little confused about, having the report before the action. Just in my opinion, it's a little confusing. I think, there's a big question within the action item, and then another place for board report question. But I did also want to say, I think it's a good idea, that this was mentioned at the committee meeting, to report regularly on grant money. I don't think that happened this past, because I understand it, and we're really looking at the but I feel, that amount has grown over the years, and, we should be made aware of what's happening with grants. And I look forward to, an open, early discussion for the next study. Thank you.
Is there no other discussion, questions concerning our finance? We'll move on to the action item. Kate, will you do the action item, please?
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve the September 2021 financial report in accordance with Exhibit 21-120.
Do I hear a second? Second by Al. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, we move on. Kate, will you do the roll call?
Brady Gillespie. Aye. Kate Canetta. Aye. Roger Cooper.
Yes.
Lauren Daly. Aye. Joe Silva.
Aye.
Rich Pinelli.
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro. Aye. Al Russo. Amy Selena.
Aye. Thank you, motion is so carried. Next, the superintendent report.
Thank you. So I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to just kind of, number one, make the board aware of how the school year is going. Now that we've kind of got over transportation hurdles, or not totally, but just wanted to share how things are going in our classrooms, impacting the social emotional throughout our school district, just kind of overall general operating. So it was necessary, given it's almost November, just kind of a state of how being very, what kind of shape we're in. Number one, I had numerous conversations with administrators across the district, teachers across the district, particularly at our low levels in our elementary schools. But this is not to say that I have not heard from representatives not anticipate for the social emotional challenges across the system. We certainly anticipated academic gaps that we need to be filled. Maybe you might recall words like acceleration is going to be necessary when we come back. And we were prepared to accelerate every regard. Our curriculum department was ready and armed and ready to support teachers and provide coaching and intervention in every grading system we could. And when we got back and we opened up our doors, we were reminded that our kids had not been in school full time in 2.5 years. I'm sorry, in a year and a half. And so we had middle school with 6th and 7th graders who had never been in middle school. We had K1 and 2, and our K1 and 2 grade, none of them, not kindergarten, not first grade, or second grade, had a full year of school events. And then our high school, again, had spoke to those realities here, when we talk about the challenges of overcrowding and taking that picture of kids walking down that one hallway. No one knows the building, right? No one knew the building in the beginning of the school year. And we are feeling the impact of that change right now. I was in a meeting today, the advisory council, the superintendent, representations of teachers across the school district, very informative groups, much like our school citywide PTO. So very informative, and they really give the superintendent a pulse of what's going on in the school. And frankly, they just reiterated the challenges that I've heard district-wide. I'm sharing this with you for two reasons. One, to share with you how our staff is feeling right now. They are overwhelmed. Our administrators are overwhelmed. And our kids are, it's probably overwhelming from them because they haven't been in school for so long. So some of you might recall some of the social media challenges, and I mean literally challenges, like go do something bad and videotape it. So our kids have been out of school, and from all the routines typically associated with school, they have not been exposed to it some time now. And it's taken us some time to get them used to being back in the building. I'm confident that we will get there. I reminded the ACS group, the advisory council superintendent today, reminded them how challenging it was from March to June with the implementation of teaching kids remotely. But quite frankly, I'm not aware of any district that did better than us. No one. I reminded them the challenge that we had when we thought we were going to open our doors last September, and we figured out a way to make it work until January. That was challenging for all of us, for our families who learned at the last minute, for our teachers who had to pivot at the last minute, for our kids who had to pivot at the last minute, but we figured it out. We're not alone right now. I mean, you can turn on, you can Google it and find out whether it's in this region, state, in this country, everyone has similar challenges. I'm optimistic that our staff will also figure it out. This does not mean that we don't. So John had just shared some of the savings that will be represented in those 10 savings. And I'm just using that as an example. I'm not necessarily talking about necessarily from those savings. But the cabinet and I will be looking at our budget. We will be looking at the commitments that we made as part of our S3 commitments, our S2 commitments, and any penny that's left over from CARES, to revisit those budgets to figure out how we can resource the school district while everyone is in such a unique situation right now. This is not to suggest that things are not happening. And at the beginning of the school year, I recall being in our Brookfield site in the kindergarten building, where kids, quite frankly, were in crisis, right? And this is the first week of school, and had no idea what school was like. Now, typically, when you drop off your kindergarten baby, you're crying and have a hard time being removed from home anyway. That was escalated times 20, it felt like. And I'm a high school guy, so I couldn't stay long anyway. But I went back. And the point being, and I know teachers are not necessarily feeling this, and our administrators are probably not feeling this. But it's getting better, right? Because I was in the building beginning of the year and a couple weeks later, and then now. And our schools are getting better, but this is not to say they don't. So the cabinet and I, we're trying to figure out how to deploy our resources in a way that they're going to give that help I am working on the guy, Ed and John. They've been here for a month and maybe one to 2 hours. And they are looking at every single staff member of the district, every penny that we've committed to. And I've asked them to look at it in different ways to make sure that we can redeploy our resources in ways that help our schools. Specifically in classrooms with teachers and with principals that have really good data. So I just wanted to make you aware that this is happening, some things that we're working on. I anticipate at our next board meeting, we will be able to share more specifically what that would look like and any plans that we have. But I just wanted to make you aware that is happening. We're planning on it. And it does impact some of the commitments we made. So you might recall those PowerPoints with all of those itemized positions we were going to hire. A lot of those positions we have not been able to hire because we can't find them. Right? So those are some of the positions and opportunities that we need to revisit. So this, just to name a few, and then we're interventionists, and I'm looking at Paris, I can't help but remember this, like we get committed to a bunch of interventionists, we couldn't find them. And so we pivoted at some school, at the middle school level, and told them that they can hire school climate specialists, which is going to support behaviors. Just as an example, there's a lot of work for us to do so that we can resource our buildings a little bit better right now. And we will also, of course, be mindful of the plan that we'll talk about and warn ourselves on. Pam and John have also been looking at agencies, tech agencies, to also help with staffing. I feel optimistic that that's also going to provide some immediate help. We don't have to worry about long-term commitment to staff. So again, I just wanted to make the board aware of that. At the same time, there's some good things happening. I mentioned one, just about the both that's taking place since we've been back in school. But two, academically, there are some good things happening. Challenges that I'm going to ask Kelly to speak to, but that doesn't mean that we're not also trying to find ways to support staff across the system. And then just some of the operational challenges, which we started off this school year with busing, but you've also heard our challenges around testing, and I wanted to provide an update on those programs as well. So okay, I'll start with Kara, and then we'll go to Kelly again.
Sure. So to mention some of the things that Kevin discussed in terms of challenges with social emotional needs of students, it was clear within the first couple of weeks of school that we needed to go back and repace all the painting that we worked on all summer and in the spring to get ready for this year. It was almost the perfect storm, if you will, in terms of the curriculum world in the readiness. We've had all this additional infusion of funding, which to buy programs that we've had our eye on for years, and it was the perfect time to finally get those in, but maybe not so much of the perfect time to roll them out at the beginning of the school year. And so we pulled back on in some areas. All of our plans are still in play. I'll talk a little bit about some of the professional development that the teachers are engaged in, but we're really trying to listen to the needs of the teachers and understand what's going on with students and trying to support the administrators through this process. But that said, we still have taken on quite a bit. We are still rolling out our K2 program with illustrative math to really build that solid foundational component for mathematics. Going a little bit slower than we initially anticipated, but we're still moving that forward. We've implemented the K-5 skills assessment, and I think I mentioned some of these in a previous meeting. It takes a lot of training and application and working with teachers to understand this new assessment. The DILS assessment is the dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills. Very critical right now, especially because we're trying to assess where students are, given the fact that we've had some disruption. And it's an assessment that will help the teachers make better literacy decision skills, literacy decision making in the classroom. We've combined that with the Being a Reader program, which is a new foundational literacy program as well. So we have a lot going on at the K2, K3 level. And this is also where some of our greatest challenges are in terms of behaviors of students and the sort of the needs. So we're going slowly, but we're still moving forward. And folks are excited about the quality of the curriculum and materials. We just need to pare back a little bit and make sure that we're meeting the needs of our teachers and our students. We're rolling out in grades 3 through 5, STEM and science programming, and we're also going slow with that. Some of our coaches are doing road shows in buildings, which is great, modeling how we are going to implement, how we teach students. We haven't had a lot of science at the elementary level, so we're really trying to build a culture around science and excitement. And to do that, we're going into classrooms and we're modeling with teachers and working with teachers to show them how to build that love for science and hands-on engagement. So that is going, again, a little bit slower than we anticipated, but we're moving that forward. We have been working with the administrators, with our with the Future Design School. If you remember, this group worked with Future Design School for a little bit. We started to talk about the academy and the transformation. They're a very dynamic group, and they're helping to facilitate conversations to build our K-12 continuum as we build out the portion of graduates. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on there. Very exciting. And of course, we're still engaging in the Academy Action Plan. So we are now into this with some of our training with our ninth grade teachers. We're continuing to develop the programmatic course overviews for what each pathway will have in terms of the electives, the course sequencing, and the graduation requirements. And again, that's kind of work that the curriculum development team is working on in the background that we're excited about. So lots happening in the curriculum world, but we're taking some things a little bit slower than we anticipated, but we're still.
Yes.
So in the spring of last year, passed in the most recent round of legislation and implementing bill, there was a bill that was passed called the Right to Read legislation. And so it's kind of early on right now to determine how this is going to affect Danbury, but basically, this is the state's effort to have a kind of statewide coordination with local school districts on foundational reading. We get behind the science of reading, and it's going to impact districts in the way that it's going to determine the curriculum in schools. It'll also determine professional development, and can also determine levels of support and training that the state will say districts are required to engage in, not meeting certain criteria by grade level, grade. And so the state has developed a consortium, has named a consortium to begin to vet research-based reading programs. They will name 5 by 2022, July 1st of 2022. Districts will have to back in to one of those 5 programs. There is an option for a waiver. We don't know what that waiver requirement looks like just yet, and we expect to hear more in the spring about what that will take.
Sure. So just to piggyback on that, I'll start with some curricular and academic things, just an update for the board. Your special education and speech and language pathologists from preschool all the way through high school will be doing an extensive reading training, which piggybacks off of this new legislation in North Bellingham. So all of the staff members will be trained in that approach. It's a specific, systematic, sequential way to teach students that are struggling, particularly with phonics or phonemic awareness and everything. So we're excited to bring that to them. We're launching it in November, right on our professional development. To support the social emotional needs, we're doing training for our pupil services staff on cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an approach of how to support students that are going through any different type of trauma, anxiety, school avoidance, acting out, aggression, behavior, and that will give some additional tools and resources to our staff on how to work with some of the issues that we're seeing in schools today. So just regarding quickly some of the social emotional behavioral things that we're seeing, I think it's really important to remember that our kids haven't been in school in several years. Many of our early learners were kind of robbed of their early childhood experience because of COVID and because of the pandemic. So when you walk in a elementary school, you're seeing kindergarten through 2nd grade really learning how to do school for the first time. And so that has put an immense stress and pressure on our teachers, on our administrators, and on top of that, we're understaffed. We're short-staffed. We don't have subs in the building. We're understaffed as far as parent educators. So not only are they dealing with more than what's usual at the start of the school year, but they're covering an extra lunch duty. They're subbing for a teacher during their prep time. And so all of that is just really adding and contributing to the pressures that our staff are facing. So we're working together as a team to try to alleviate each one of those issues in the best way that we can. So I just think we need an acknowledgement of the teachers and our admin team and our non-certified staff members of the stressors that are on their plate, and a little bit of the okay that social emotional has to come first. If kids are not doing okay, we need to pause, regardless of the curriculum or the math curriculum, whatever it needs to be, to kind of regroup, reset, and then move forward. We all know kids don't learn unless they're in a good place to learn. And so while, high academic standards and high achievement for all of our kids is always our primary goal, we also need to be sensitive to the realities of what they're going through today. And so we're trying to find that careful balance that we're still keeping those high expectations, but we're also kind of stopping in the moment, reteaching, replanning, regrouping, and reaching out. Some of our families are in need of some additional support services, and so we're trying to link them up with different community agencies and so forth. So I definitely reiterate everything everyone before me has said. We're seeing an improvement since the start of the school year, but it's still a lot, and it's felt like we're going through this process for a long time. And I think that's just adding to the heightened feelings and emotions of some of our staff. So we'll continue to work through and strategize how we can best support them. We're trying to listen and engage their feedback and make sure that where they're learning it and whatever.
Okay, so operations, the biggest thing that I've been talking to you about has been the compliance with the executive order. We're in real good shape. We've got a weekly testing pool that's down to just about 150. It drops every week as more and more people are starting to get their second doses and become fully vaccinated. So that's actually making life in our suite a little bit more manageable because there's not so many people. We opened the testing window to Saturdays as well. So folks can now test Saturday, Sunday, Monday with monthly test results, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday with test results. Just that additional day on the weekend has given people an opportunity to relax a little bit, find time to get a test that's convenient, and get their results submitted and tested in a timely way. So we've seen a lot of kind of reduction in stress and pressure on that. Right now, what we're seeing, if anything, is some delayed test results from a few of the testing locations. And so I've been working with the union, particularly the teachers union, on some ways we might be able to resolve that and still be in compliance with the executive order. So we're looking constantly at ways to make this a little bit more manageable for those people that, for whatever reason, might be in that weekly testing pool. I did receive earlier this week some communication from the State Department of Education. They have opened a survey asking districts to report on their vaccination percentages and testing. So we're now going to take all of this data we've been gathering over the last 4 weeks and implement it into kind of response to the testing window, the survey window that the state has opened this week. So we'll be able to get that, and we're in a really good shape to be able to comply with that. So we will go ahead and check that box this week and continue to monitor as we go. What we're seeing, in addition to kind of regular absences, which have been super high, I think last Friday we saw something like 133 teachers. We're seeing high absences, which I think is a reflection of what we've all been talking about here. Not only is the illness starting to go around in that season, but we're also seeing people are really, some are struggling. In addition to that, those folks who have not had their testing complete are also absences that are going through the system because they can't come to work and get on the test results. So this has all made finding a sub-service, I think, all the more critical, and the academy team is really put a priority on that. John and I have worked through presentations from the two big industry leaders in that sub-service provision, and we're poised to ask a few more questions and make some decisions about whether that's something we can implement. We would see a slow increase, but an increase nonetheless in our ability to fill gaps. And with these agencies, as they start to bring on board some additional subs in areas of teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries, and we're hoping some nursing staff. Those are the 4 areas where we have really been hit pretty hard, particularly nurses, we've been hit very hard. And we have exhausted our access to temporary agencies. No one has it left. And so we're all kind of fighting for this limited pool of folks, even on a temporary basis. So we're hopeful that even service may be able to get us access to a wider pool and maybe more efficiently deployed pool as well. So that's something that we're priority. Lastly, the one thing I do want to mention is several years ago, many of you remember when we brought on EAP program, Employee Assistance Program. One component of that we did bring on is the provision of kind of workshops and presentation and professional development. And so from time to time, including monthly, Chrissy, with our insurance coordinator, is forwarding out information to all of our employees. Anybody who works here, whether they're in the plan, our health insurance plan or not, has access to these wellness videos, six newsletters. So we're going to look at seeing if we can roll out some social and emotional health modules, maybe during PD time, to help our employees to kind of get through this period of time. I think what we're all finding is this has really been hard, and so if we can leverage some of those dollars that are set aside in that plan for providing some more resources for folks to access either with us or on their own time, that's something we're going to prioritize for the coming weeks.
Yes.
I don't know whether this is a question for Kim, for Kevin, somebody, Kevin, anybody. Nurses. I ran into a friend in the supermarket. I don't know where their kid goes to school, so I will apologize off of that. They were very disconcerted because their child got sick at school and they got a call, and there was no nurse in the building. They were really, really not happy. Now, I suggested they obviously contact people, broken, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I have no idea, but I promised I would ask the question. It was their understanding their nurse had been pulled out of that building and be sent someplace else. Is that happening? And if so, why?
I can address that. So we are looking to redeploy nurses. Some of our buildings have multiple nurses in them. And so when there is an absence or a shortage, we do need to occasionally pull a nurse, and we have had to do that quite a bit this year.
I understand. They were under the impression their school only had one nurse and their nurse was sent someplace else. They were very not happy.
Understood. There have been a handful of occasions this year that we have had one nurse covering two buildings. And it's based on Pat Liddell looks at it very, very carefully and making sure that someone is floating between the two buildings when they need to. Again, not ideal, but in this situation, it is something that we have had to do. It is done on a rare occasion, but we have had to do it. So I would need to look into the particulars of that situation and talk. There are certain buildings based on the medical needs of kids in that building that we cannot do that. There are other buildings that we have, let's say, two buildings on one campus, that we can have a nurse that covers both buildings with another person that's med trained and an administrator that would be the designated in the absence. Kathy O'Dowd is also filling it. I think there might have been one day this year that she has not been a school nurse. Her job is to oversee the school nurses. So she is also stepping into those kind of things. So I don't want to say it's never happened. It's happened rarely, but it is something that we have had to do, which is why we're reaching out to agencies to elicit more support.
I mean, logically, there's two buildings, you can have one nurse, Middle Ridge and West Side. I don't think they were on a double campus school, because I want to say, I think they're a great place to stop the reference. I know they're not in town. It just struck me as odd that there was no nurse in one building, you pull them out of a building they're already assigned to put them in another building.
What
We're going to have a building without a nurse in it anyway.
What we have to do though is we do understand, we do have some students, for example, that are diabetics, that require constant nursing supervision. And so if there is a situation in which we have to pull a nurse, we have to look at the medical needs of the students in that building, and that's where Kathy's positioned to make the best decision. So again, I'm not minimizing, we need more nurses. We need more support, but we have had to make those difficult decisions this year, and that's the first time we've ever had.
Again, you can't manufacture nurses out of a whole bunch.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So at least it's rare.
Yes.
Just like to comment, congratulate Kevin and his cabinet. I've had very positive remarks made about the social emotional use of tennis for the kids up to high school. And I want to congratulate Kevin. And again, Kevin, for utilizing the gymnasiums so we can possibly redeploy those additional $300,000 resources in other social emotional areas. So, well done, sir.
Any other questions? We have our student rep, and I apologize. I
apologize for being late. Come on. But, thank you for giving me this opportunity to, do the food number. Anyways, I am coming from ACE. Thank you for allowing me to represent and speak on behalf of our Alternative Center for Excellence. This week, ACE students and staff are participating in Spirit Week, where each day we have fun by dressing up in the following themes: Twin Day, Decades Day, Color Wars by diverse groups, Monster Day, and Costume Day. Students were voted on by students using a uniform. Today was Color Wars, and it was a really nice day. It's nice to see my friends and other students, be close with each other at ACE and get all excited about what we're gonna wear, and it's nice that we do that too. And, it kind of makes us feel like we're not being left out, and not only do we just do that, but we get the chance to do that stuff too. On October 26th, there were professional development staff participated in a workshop regarding Generation Z, their skills, challenges, and attributes. ACE guidance group participated in a Halloween decorating challenge. Each guidance group worked together in teams to create a Halloween-themed classroom door that will be judged by our main office staff, social worker, and guidance counselor. The winning guidance group will receive a piece of art. ACE would like to publicly recognize September Student of the Month award winners. Sorry, I'm a little late. Dominic Perez and Spencer Robbins. We would also like to congratulate Spencer and Riza Diaz for earning the ACE Arts Awards for caring. The ACE of Spades Award is for hard work, where earned by the Ace of Spades Award was earned by Cade Palace, Andrew Lattimore, and Chris Palace. Congratulations to all of you for a great month of September. Thank you for allowing me to share what's going on at ACE. And stay safe everyone, and stay ACE strong. Thank you.
And on behalf of the board, thank you for coming and bringing your report to us. Yeah. The Alternative Center. Thank you again, young lady.
Thank you.
So just, I think everyone has in their packets, both the 21-22 school year. Just looked at previous board agenda items, years, depending on the year, the goals of the year for the board meeting prior to the board's consideration, and then there was a motion on the subsequent board meeting. So in your packet, you can see exhibits 21-115, and they're not terribly different from the process and structure of previous years. So there's a focus on student learning and achievement, housing career readiness for all students, fiscal responsibility, planning for growth and talent acquisition, organizational systems for learning, opportunity, and equity. Those are the three big areas, and then within there you'll see goals for those three areas. And so just ask the board, I don't know if there are any questions this evening, clarifying questions this evening. So if you have answers, you have in mind that we'll go.
So this is for information, and then our next board meeting, we can have an overall open discussion about this. And looking forward, as we move forward as a board, after the election, then the committee will come together, the full board will come together, and then we will draw up our goals and see how those goals will be in line with the superintendent goals. That is always in place. So hopefully after the election, we can get through the Christmas holidays and the first of the year, we can come together as a group. Is that okay with everyone?
So can we not ask questions now, or do you want to hold the question? So this is coming to a vote at our next meeting?
Not a vote.
Oh,
Okay, no vote.
okay. So we'll have an opportunity.
Continue to this, yes,
Okay,
yes.
great.
So, but again, everybody's in favor of moving forward to 2022, what our direction should be. I don't have anything to report, but there's quite a few questions. We went over the calendar, correction in the calendar. I sort of wanted to ask Mr. Washington to sort of bring us up to date and talk briefly about security. Because so many things are happening in different area of the country as far as kids with guns, this and that, shootings, and what is the protocol when it comes to a lockdown for our school? I know that we have a protocol in place, but I think we haven't talked about that in a long time, and we don't ever know what can happen in any of our schools. So could you just briefly tell us about it?
Sure, my pleasure. So one, all of our schools are, COVID or no COVID, still required to have monthly drills to ensure the safety of the building. So those drills can be typical fire drills, and/or those can also be drills for lockdown. And unfortunately, time to time, we have to have a lockdown drill. We may be notified by the police that something is happening in the school community, or in some rare instances, we may have something happening in the school that requires a lockdown. The point being, monthly, all of our principals are required to have some type of drill to make sure that the school, the students, the staff is ready and so I just want to reiterate that the school, despite our time away from the building, full-time, the staff is still participating in drills, to make sure we're prepared for it. That remains unchanged. And I think in time as Cooper, as Captain and I move forward, developing and revisiting our district, our strategic plan, 2022, 23 and beyond. Our school climate, which was certainly highlighted in the first iteration of the strategic plan. We'll definitely be revisiting that and being a little bit even more strategic about safety, perhaps some type of audit for our school district to make sure we are maximizing our grant dollars, because we're a recipient of a school security grant, which will get significant reimbursement. Those monies, and John is one of the many things I've already put in John's office and in his lap, and making sure that we have a plan in place to maximize these grant monies, security grant monies, make sure we have high quality security. So this could be anything from cameras, this could be anything from upgrading cameras, upgrading walkie-talkies for our schools, communication. It could be vehicles, walking into our school areas. That would be some of our schools already have been outfitted with new vehicles, to help with school security. We will have some type of audit done with these monies to get an assessment by the district, come up with a security plan to make sure all of our buildings are safe. So that's definitely something that we're prioritizing.
Thank you. Next, my question would be, and maybe something other members might be able to answer. As I go to the early learning center on Grand Avenue, which is a beautiful facility, and who is responsible for putting a sign there to make people that are flying up and down that street, and parents are crossing the street with the little ones? There's nothing when they come from White Street to turn up Granville Avenue or come down Osborne Street to say that there's children. So I don't know if the city is responsible for for that? Because it's very important, and it's not just for Granville Avenue, it's for all of our schools. But, most of the people are not used to that school being, the church being a school, and they just come 100% at high mile there, and the parents are trying to cross over to get to the school. So my question is, who's responsible for making sure there's some type of sign that says that, you know, parents, of course, when we have small kids, or whatever the sign has to say? Yes.
That starts with the chief.
Thank you, I didn't know.
Chief traffic guidance.
So Kelly, how do we make sure that that happens?
We will work it out.
You and the superintendent.
They will figure it out.
Okay. Last one, I certainly want to thank, all our board members, because, for the last year and a half, we all have been on all kind of schedules. And being at the meetings and being able to support, what we could do as elected officials. I really want to thank Ogle, who has done a beautiful job in putting together our minutes. You know, we all have different talents, and I couldn't do the minutes to save my life. But thank you, Ogle, you do a beautiful job. Okay. Are there any other questions? Mr. Watson, do you have anything you want to?
None for myself.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just a question before.
I'm sorry, committee's report or whatever.
Not a committee, but,
Okay.
just a question as to, the progress with our transportation. We're closing in on quarter one of the school year, so is that still a work in progress? I know kids are still on some really long bus routes.
So-
Sorry to ask
No,
a
no,
question.
Listen, the reality is there's still parents out there who are still asking the same question. And the answer is twofold. One is gotten a lot better to the point where it's not the overwhelming item in my office and our respective offices. We're worried about how late kids are getting home every day. That's not the same kind of issues that we had before. But now I think we're at a point where we're comparing it to regular school, and we know we're not as efficient as with regular school. So we're certainly better. But know how much better we're going to get right now. Just kind of given the bus shortage challenge is not known. When we partnered, when we contracted with STA, received additional buses, but we didn't receive additional drivers with those buses. We just got short that we're still doing. And then when they have one or two people that are out, if they do, the routes are combined and the routes are home. And it's daily. I anticipated we would have challenges with testing. STA has done an amazing job making sure tests are available for their drivers. My understanding is on Monday, they have the results on Wednesday, they bring the test results to them. So it's actually been less of an issue that, as I had anticipated, I'm happy to report that. They still have normal absences the way we do as an organization. And when they do, given that they're already stretched, we deal with that. With all of that said, it's so much better than the school year. But I'm hoping we can still find some efficiencies in how we do things. And a lot of our folks are still reluctant to let all the kids on the bus, trying to avoid everyone gathering in one space. So result of timeliness, and somebody got a choice. We're going to give kids the time to get home time to catch some of those things. And other days we're still working.
Any other questions? Amy? You want to? No, you want to wait here? Okay. Okay. There's, superintendent doesn't have, anything else on the agenda, and there's no other communications, comments. I need to entertain a motion to enter into executive session. Carol? Make the motion.
To discuss,
Read the motion. You have to, this is very quick.
executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations with DSAA administrators and the Teamsters Union Local 677 International Brotherhood, Teamsters School Lunch Personnel, with possible action in public session.
Motion made by Al, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion so carried. If someone needs to go take a break, right, 2 minutes.